Stephen Awney of rural Adams, North Dakota, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison with credit for 401 days served in the shooting death of his daughter Stephanie last year. He was originally charged with murder. A jury found him guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. Stephanie Awney died after being taken to the hospital in Park River suffering from a gunshot wound. For background on this story, here's our report from May 2nd of 2019.
65-year-old Stephen Awney has been charged with murder in the death of his daughter. This is quoting directly from the criminal complaint that was just filed. The Walsh County Sheriff's Office received a report of an incident that occurred at a rural Adams residence that was located within Walsh County yesterday morning. The affidavit was dispatched to the rural Adams residence for a suicidal male, Stephen Awney, that had a firearm in his hand. Your affidavit arrived on the scene and saw Stephen Awney's vehicle, a 94 white Chevrolet pickup, wasn't parked in the driveway. Your affidavit attempted to use the patrol car's external loudspeaker to call Stephen Awney out of the residence, but it was malfunctioning. Your affidavit then blasted the loud audible horn to let Stephen Awney know that law enforcement was present but had negative contact. Then the officer went into the west door, knocked, and announced several times. They could hear movement within the house. Around the fifth attempt to get Stephen Awney to open the door opened slightly. Officers saw a black reflective object in Stephen Awney's right hand, and part of his face was exposed. Stephen Awney immediately slammed the door, and the officer went for cover. Awney then reopened the door, and the officer could clearly see Awney was holding a cell phone, and he was talking to someone. Stephen Awney told the person on the phone that was on the phone with him, "They're here to arrest me." The officer escorted Stephen Awney to the patrol car and asked Stephen Awney what had him so upset today, and he stated that he was tired of his kids leeching off him. The officer asked Stephen Awney who was currently living with him, and he stated Jane Doe and another family member. Stephen Awney told the officer that he wanted them out of his residence. The officer asked Awney if he intended to hurt himself today, and he stated no. The officer asked Steve Awney if there were any guns in the residence, and he stated no. Stephen Awney asked the officer if he was going to arrest him. During the investigation, the officer was informed Jane Doe, who was at First Care Hospital with an apparent gunshot wound to her abdomen. Jane Doe succumbed to her injuries while at the hospital. The officer then read Steve Awney his Miranda warning and asked him if he was willing to talk. Steve Awney then stated, "So, you're arresting me?" And I told Awney that he wasn't under arrest at this time and that the officer just wanted to ask him a couple of questions. The officer asked Steve Awney when he last saw Jane Doe, and he stated at approximately 9 a.m. Awney told the officer that Jane Doe was transported by a family member to the city of Park River. A family member of Steve Awney arrived at the residence. The family member told the officer after they spoke with Steve Awney at approximately 10:35 a.m., Steve Awney told him that he had punched or shoved Jane Doe in the stomach. The family member stated that what Steve Awney had said didn't make much sense. A family member was interviewed at First Care Hospital, and the officer was advised there was an altercation within the residence between Steve Awney and Jane Doe. The family member stated that she was inside the bedroom of the residence with the door closed. The family member stated she heard a loud sound of a pop. The family member described the pop sound being that of a pellet gun, or like a .22 caliber pistol being discharged. The family member exited the bedroom and saw Jane Doe downstairs leaning over the kitchen table. Jane Doe told the family member, "Take me to the Park River, it's serious and it hurts." The officer was advised. Steve Awney's demeanor changed instantly as he was in disbelief about what had happened. Steve Awney told the family member to take his pickup and bring Jane Doe to the hospital. The officer was also advised that they were the only three people inside the residence at the time of the altercation. The officer placed Steve Awney under arrest, and he was transported to Walsh County Correctional Facility.
Again, Stephen Awney of rural Adams, North Dakota, has been sentenced to 10 years in prison in connection to the shooting death of his daughter after a jury found him guilty of manslaughter. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNews.TV.